Okay, so let me bring the question on down here. That's negative 25x squared equals negative 10x minus 8. Okay. So how do we solve? Solving x squared and x to the first. Well, I'm going to add to the story now. I keep doing it piece by piece. Step number one, get a 0. So that's the first step. We got to get a 0 on one side. It doesn't really matter which side. It's easier to move the x squared term to the side where it is positive. So I'm going to take, I'm going to add, so I'm going to move this guy. I'm going to add 25x squared to both sides, like that. So, and then when I do, this will be 0 here, right? And the other side will be 25x squared minus 10x minus 8. Is that making sense? If you want to save time, and in some ways it's also kind of easier, you can just jump it. What I mean is you can just take this minus 25x squared and jump it to the other side. And when you do, it changes signs, doesn't it? Becomes a positive 25x squared. So that's just a quick way to get your 0, because that's what we always do in step one, is we get a 0 on one side. It doesn't really matter whether 0 is on the left side or the right side. You can do it either way, but it will be easier if you move the x squared to the side where it's positive. It's just easier on the numbers.
Will you still get the same answer if you move everything on the right to the left? Like instead, if you were to add 10x and 8, would you still get the same answer in the end?
You totally would. Exactly. Okay. Exactly, Taryn. That's the other option. You could have just jumped both these guys to the other side, and that would have left the front term negative. Then they would have jumped over and become positive, right? Because when things jump to the other side, you're right on. They switch their signs. Yeah, that's totally doable also. Okay. But then the front term would have been negative. It would work. It'd be the right answers. But when you use the quadratic formula, it's a little difficult. A lot of students get messed up by the negative in the front. So I don't suggest it, but if you're careful, it'll work. It is still true. So yeah, either way, just get a 0 on one side. It'll be easier to jump everything so that the front term is positive. Okay, now step 2. You can try to factor. So now I've been saying factor up to now. Now I'm going to say you can try to factor, or you can use the quadratic. You can try to factor. Let me do this. You can try to factor, or you can use the quadratic. No, write it out. The quadratic formula. What's the quadratic formula? It's right here. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There it is. You get it. Remember, you get notes on the exam, so you don't have to memorize this. You can just put it on your notes. You get front and back of a full sheet of paper to have with you during every exam, and of course your calculator. So you can just write that right on your formula sheet, your note sheet for the exam. Quadratic formula. Okay, so what's this A, B, C step? Well, I think you can probably guess. The A is the number in front of x squared. It's just the number, not the x squared itself. The B is the number in front of x, and the C is the number at the back, not the x's. So notice I didn't circle the x's. I just circled the numbers in front of the x's. That's the A, B, and C. And don't forget, step 1, you had to get a 0 first. So step 1, you've got to get a 0, because that changed the sign, didn't it? If I tried to get the A back here, it would have been negative 25x squared. That's not right. So your first step is you've got to get a 0. So we did that. In step 2, you can try to factor, which we did on some of the other problems, but most students prefer the quadratic formula. It's an easier way to go. So, all right, so let's do it. Let's plug this stuff in now to the quadratic formula. So I'm going to plug in the B right there. Now notice there's a negative sign in the formula. That's in addition to the negative sign that B has on it, right? So we're going to get negative, and then when I plug in the B, negative 10. So it's going to end up being positive in the end, isn't it? Everybody see that? So there's the negative sign in the formula, and then there's the negative sign on the B. And now B squared, which will be negative 10 squared, minus 4 times A is 25 times C is negative 8. All over, better line there. All over 2 times A, and what was A is 25. All right, do you see what I did there? I just plugged in the A, the B, and the C. Carefully though, with their signs. And that's in addition to any signs already built into the quadratic formula. So right here in the front, we have double negative. You know that means positive 10. So positive 10 now. Positive 10 plus or minus the square root. Then just use your calculator. Negative 10 squared, that's going to be 100. It's negative squared is positive. Here, watch the signs carefully. Negative, positive, negative. Just count the negatives. See how there's 1, 2 negatives? So that's going to be positive, isn't it? I would just do those by hand. And then just take your calculator and go 4 times 25 times 8. You'll get 800. All over 2 times 25, 50. Do you see how I know it's positive? 2 negatives make it positive, don't they? Right? The 2 negatives there make it positive. If there were 3 negatives, it would go back to negative, wouldn't it? Or if there was just 1 negative, that'd be negative. So when a bunch of things are multiplying, like this number, this number, this number, all multiplying, just count the negatives. 2 negatives makes it positive. And so then it comes down as a positive 800. Okay, so where are we at? So this is going to be 10 plus or minus the square root of 900 all over 50. And now you can simply use your calculator, take the square root of 900, and you'll get 30. The square root of 900 will come out 30. Because 30 times 30 is 900. All right, so now we have to do the 2 options. What do I mean 2 options? Well, plus or minus. So, oops, screen's moving on me there. So we have 10 plus 30 over 50, or 10 minus 30 over 50. Well, we have the plus option, and we have the minus option, right? Because we have plus and minus. So you have to do the 2 different versions. It's actually, this is actually shorthand for 2 separate answers, which we're now seeing. So this becomes what? This becomes 40 over 50, and this becomes minus 20 over 50. Reduce these fractions, meaning divide top and bottom by 10. And you get what? You get 4/5. Same thing here, divide top and bottom by 10. Minus 2/5. There's the 2 answers. 4/5 and minus 2/5. Do they care about the order on this one? I don't remember. It just says, enter the answers. Yeah, that's it. Just separate them by a comma. So there we go. There would be the 2 answers on that one. So questions on that one. So there's using the quadratic formula.